welcome. 25% tariffs on India will now be applicable from the 7th of August. Remember, this is not just 25% of the Donald Trump announced tariffs, but also a penalty. A penalty that at the moment is not defined. We don't know the details of it yet, but it is a penalty for defense and energy from Russia towards India. And what really does that mean? And what does the implications really from the broader perspective of the 25% tariffs coming in for India mean for the economy, for India's stock markets, and for oil prices going forward? Well, to of course decode this further, I'm joined by senior economist Mitali Nikore. I'm also joined by Peter McGuire, CEO, AustraliaTrading.com. Thank you both for your time. Mitali, first, what do we make of this for the economy? Remember, there have been recent comments coming in from the US President Donald Trump stating that India and Russia can take their dead economies down together. Very harsh statements coming in there for India. So, your first thoughts on really the implications once this takes place, and of course, what do these comments coming in mean now?
So I think, Sakshi, very honestly, to begin with, I'd like to say that somewhere we have been blindsided through these negotiations. You know, the Indian delegation has clearly been blindsided in these negotiations, and at no fault of theirs. I mean, there is absolutely no way that the Indian delegation could have known that the intent and letter and the way in which the message is conveyed would shift so much so quickly. You know, there is no way that anybody could predict that. I've personally been in touch with some of the people and the researchers who have been contributing to this entire mini trade deal discussion. And honestly, everything was looking upwards. If we just rewind back to February, in February, when Prime Minister Modi met President Trump, a target was set to increase India-US trade to $500 billion by 2030. From that discussion to calling India's economy dead on a social media platform, I think we've come a very far. We've come very far in a direction that's not good for the Indian economy, but also a direction that's not befitting a president. To speak like that and to speak like that on a public platform. Secondly, when it comes to the situation of the Indian economy vis-a-vis the British economy or the American economy or any of the developed countries, we are the fastest growing emerging economy in the world. We are projected to remain the fastest growing emerging economy for the next 3 years, regardless of what happens on the side of merchandise exports. Yes, we have considerable exports when it comes to services. A lot of that is dependent on US and US companies, but at the same time, it's also well known that India's capabilities when it comes to products as well as services are extremely high quality, and there are many buyers, across the world where we can do business and we can do trade. And honestly, having spent the last month in America myself, attending several conferences, discussions, and meetings, I can attest to the fact that there are several things that the US economy hasn't done, being the richest economy in the world with a per capita income of $85,000. How is it that they are today grappling with homelessness, with hunger, with the lack of public transport, with the lack of sanitation services, and with the lack of basic living services for all who earn under a certain number, say between 20 lower than $20,000. So they have built an economy for the rich, and today this is a clear evidence that they want to build a global economy for the rich. India does not stand for those principles. India has never stood for those principles. We are a socialist country at the heart of it, and we have to protect our farmers, we have to protect our poor, we have to protect our dairy industry, and we have to protect the marginalized. So, this would have been a hard decision for the government, but we are all standing by the government because this is necessary for our economy.
Absolutely. And like you said, the Indian government has reiterated that, look, we will do all we can for the welfare to protect and promote farmers, MSMEs, as well as entrepreneurs. And, it's not just restricted to the economy. The impact on oil prices also, Peter, with Washington announcing an economic partnership with Islamabad to help develop Pakistan's oil reserves, a country with no active trade agreement with the US, and one that India views as a long standing sponsor of cross border terrorism. Donald Trump, in fact, went a step further, suggesting, and I quote, saying, maybe they'll be selling oil to India someday. What do you make of these comments, and what do you make of the larger framework of when these tariffs come into effect? How will oil prices be impacted?
Well, I think, and building on, the discussion so far, I think one needs to be conscious. We've got where we're drawing oil from, naturally, Russia, 35% to 37% of Russian crude for India. We've got Iraq producing about 19%, then the next UAE and Saudi. Now, there seems to be a degree of brinkmanship here, and is the agenda as far as Ukraine versus Russia, the war, and it seems like that India is being drawn into this particular battle from a geopolitical standpoint, from
Mhm.
oil and consumption and military hardware. And if it doesn't negotiate or try and assist in this process, I think it's going to be penalised heavily. And that seems to be very much a work in progress as we're seeing this all unfold. This is live. This isn't, a case study that we've got the opportunity of examining previous business models and saying, oh, well, this is how it'll work out, or this is the way and the flow. This is very, very new and dynamic. And because it's so dynamic, it really creates, I think, emotions. Secondly, it creates much angst from the consumer, well, I think the projected consumer. And thirdly, where is this all running to? What's the end game here? The relationship that I understand that India has with America, from business schools to universities to all forms of manufacturer to the CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, I looking in, I think it has a very strong strategic relationship. So it just seems that there is a many different lenses that one needs to look at through the examination of this whole process. And I, it's very difficult to really forecast how August is going to play out, where Prime Minister Modi works, where President Trump sits on all of this, and even as you said, as far as Pakistan and the projects for the foreseeable future and strategic ties in that regard.
Right, Mitali, what do you make of this comment coming in from Donald Trump, taking it a step further, saying that maybe someday they'll be selling oil to India? And also, like he was mentioning, that look, this right now we still don't know where things stand.
So I think Sakshi, actually, I've seen an interview that Dr. Shashi Tharoor did yesterday on your channel, and he was mentioning that President Trump and Pakistan can enter into any deals that they want, but by that time, my hope and wish is that India should be independent of oil as one of its main energy supplies. I think we have to start looking inwards and building such a strong economy that others want to come and work with us, as opposed to looking outwards and looking for support. And I think this is the entire tenet of Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we say that we are going to build such a strong, even if it's an agricultural based economy, even if it's a services based economy, it's an economy that we should build for sustainable development. We should show the world that our ancient wisdom, when we harness it, we can actually create economic structures that the world will want to learn from us. And this is today what China has done. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, they are entering these negotiations at a position of strength in some ways. And we also, given our large economic base, given our large consumption base, are entering with some strength. If the US walks away from us, they also lose something. So at the end of the day, it's important for us to continue building our strengths so that any negotiation that we enter with any other country as well, we are always there to, offer a competitive advantage and a comparative advantage.
Absolutely. And, taking this back to tariffs, really, Peter, the spotlight back on the tariffs coming into effect and how that will impact oil prices, inflation altogether, shipments. Lastly, how do you see this impacting the real world, and where do you see crude prices then post August 7th?
Well, one would think, with the abundance of crude oil in the marketplace, that you would see cheap prices. There seems to be a very rapid push to the upside of pricing over the last week. And this seems to be gaining momentum, not losing momentum. And I
Mhm.
would think that volatility is going to be the name of the game over the rest of next week and possibly the week after. We've got an OPEC Plus meeting coming. We're conscious as far as the strategic focus of OPEC Plus to increase production, and I won't be surprised that it increases more aggressively. As we've determined, there should be a glut in the market come end of Q3 or start of Q4, which is only 2 months away. So maybe we're going to see another push up as far as prices in the short term. And it's very difficult in the sense this is so unique. And that's the main issue at hand. It's not something, again, that we can use as a test case to say, oh, well, this is the key drivers that normally impress and drive prices higher. That's a totally different ballpark at the moment. So maybe there's a couple of more dollars to be added and over the next week. And then we take a deep breath to see whether President Trump and Prime Minister Modi have secured a better deal for India moving forward. It's very much a work in progress.
A work in progress, a unique situation as we continue to monitor really the Trump tariff tantrums, as we call it. We will see how the impact really unfolds on the economy, stock markets, and oil prices. But thank you so much for sharing your initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.